I want to introduce myself. I'm Paul Olson. I'm the host of the show, The Future of Pickleball on Selkirk TV. I want to give you a little bit of background as to what I've done in my life to kind of give you a reason why I'm going to talk on the subject of why global governance is such a critical component for our sport right now. Long before I got into the pickleball space, I spent my entire working life in the sporting goods business. I've been in numerous aspects of different sports, different industries. I was with Adidas for a long time. I was with divisions of Reebok in the footwear business. I've been in the sports arena forever, literally, look at me. So the reality of that was then when I, about 13 years ago, was introduced to pickleball through a tennis buddy of mine. And I had played competitive tennis from the time I was a little boy until I was in my early 60s. And I found pickleball and I was blown away with it. No interest beyond, I was retired, no interest beyond anything other than having fun, and I liked court sports and racket sports. Well, that led me to the point that in Minnesota, in the early 2012, 2013 time, there were a handful of players that were snowbirds that had been going down to Arizona, they'd been going to Florida, and they'd found pickleball and they wanted to bring it back and get it going. So I was very much in the sort of early adopter stage as things happened. So I've been fortunate to see a lot of it. And then 7 years ago, I started traveling in the pickleball world sort of full time. Retired, just having fun playing pickleball, but I played everywhere. And I had a van RV that I put 180,000 miles on in 5 years, going to every pickleball place on the planet. I lead into the fact that I've been immersed in this game. Having been a professional business person in the sporting goods industry, I always envied people that were able to immerse themselves in the sport that I couldn't. I was a dad, I was a businessman, I had to make a living, I couldn't be anything other than a business person. I have become the quintessential pickleball junkie of pickleball junkies, so bear with me. With that being said, 2.5 years ago, I was playing in New York City in the first Flushing Meadows tournament that was ever done in New York. And I was there, actually, my friend Romy Maxey partnered with me. He's back there somewhere. And we had an amazing experience. And they're the Selkirk brothers, who I knew very well, approached me and said, would you be considered doing a podcast for us? And I said, well, what do I know about podcasts? And they said, you don't need to know about anything, but you meet everybody in the sport. I'm an older person. I love the business side of things, and I'm a pretty consummate networker. They asked me to reach out and find the stories in the sport that are what makes the sport unique and different and makes it grow from a business perspective. I had my first interview at the time with a guy who was very, very prominent in the sport named Steve Kuhn. And Steve was a man that I had met through a club that I ran in Minnesota. And he would come in from being out of town. Anybody not know who Steve Kuhn is? Should I expand it? Okay. So he would come to the club and was a pretty good pickleball player and wanted to play because he came on business and came 7 or 8 times. And then one day Steve called me from Austin, Texas, where he lived, and invited me to pickleball in Austin, Texas. And I thought, well, that's kind of a bit of a stretch. He said, well, I've got Andre Agassi and Andy Roddick playing in my backyard, and ESPN is going to broadcast it, and I'd like you to be my guest. So I said, well, I think I could go to Austin, Texas for that. And that really was the first really big media event in pickleball, and it was great fun to be there. But through meeting people like that, and now on my show, The Future of Pickleball, and the Selkirk TV app, if you do not have it downloaded on your phone, you're making a mistake. It's a free app. It is absolutely the most comprehensive free app in pickleball, covering podcasters, coaching, instruction. I just did an interview with the National Pickleball League's administration, and they formed a partnership with Selkirk where they're going to begin broadcasting on Selkirk TV app. They're going to begin broadcasting the NPL's matches live. Very, very cool stuff. That's what led me to where I am today. So we're here to talk about really what has kind of become my personal passion project, and that is we have to arrive at singular, unified global governance in the sport of pickleball. For years and years and years, there's been talk about global governance in pickleball, and it hasn't happened. Everybody's got reasons and arguments and excuses as to why it's happened. I'm here to speak to you guys today to talk about the fact that we as an industry have to get this needle moved forward. There's been talk here at the event so far about how important the Olympics will be and that we have to have singular, unified global governance for the Olympics to be able to accept and approve us in the sport. That earliest opportunity we've got to be in the Olympics is 7 years from now. And it's going to take all that time that if we can get into the 2032 Olympics in Brisbane, Australia, that is our earliest opportunity. Global governance cannot wait. We have to be at a standpoint for a lot of other reasons that I'm going to get into. And I wanted to give you a little bit of an idea in terms of some of the insights and inputs that I've had from people in my interview process. On my show, I've had Mike Neely and Justin Maloof from USA Pickleball. That's the CEO and the COO. Kobina Akufo, the president of the Continental African Pickleball, has been on my show. Javier Regalado, that was here yesterday. Pranav Kohli is one of the leaders in India of pickleball, has been on the show. Frank Arrico is the head of the CEO of European Pickleball. Karen Mitchell, amazing lady in England, has developed English pickleball to be the standout country in Europe. Her English Open last year had 1,000 players playing in London, or playing not in London, but in England, and they're talking this year about possibly having over 2,000 players playing in the English Open. There's no other tournament outside the United States that has ever exceeded 1,000 players. That's amazing stuff. A man named UEC Lau has been a leader in developing pickleball in China and in Canada, has been on the show. Carl Schmitz, the CTO of USA Pickleball, and a woman named Chandler Carney from Pickleball in Chile. And so I'm not bragging in bringing those people out. I'm saying I've had these wonderful opportunities, and all of these interviews are all available on the history of my show. And if you go on either YouTube or on Selkirk TV, you can see the entire library. But they've informed me in an amazing way from different perspectives, different ideas. And at the end of the day, it led me last January to Dubai. And we had the first global pickleball conference in the sport, and it was in Dubai, and it was fascinating to meet the Middle Easterners, the Asians that were there, a few Europeans. It was just an amazing thing to see how other people are now viewing our sport. All that leads to the fact that my theme today is we in pickleball need to help push for global governance for a couple of reasons. Give me a moment here. The first thing I want to cover a little bit, because I do see there is some confusion sometimes in people I talk to, and most of the folks that are in my network now are serious pickleball players. They've been in the game, they're in the business of pickleball, they're really involved, and I often find people don't understand that there is a difference between global governance and national governance, league governance, pro teams events. Global governance is the voice of the world for pickleball. It is the way that members and countries around the world identify themselves as being part of the sport collectively, and that is the key component that we want to have. An example of some of the things that go on, we all know about all the different acronyms, the PPA and the APP and the MLP. All of these things, they're simply private enterprises that are trying to do something within pickleball. That's their business. Global governance should be the governing body that controls the voice of the game, the rules, the standards of the game, and set the tone so that there is uniformity around the world. I've had a couple of guests on recently one was from the coaching side who's doing international coaching via video broadcasts. And I met another man named Ron Ponder who does referee training around the world. And he talked to me, and it was really interesting as he described, we need to have coaches or referees trained just like we do coaches and players, because they're the barometer that monitors the standards and the rules of the game. So all of these things are pieces that come together in our sport. Oh, there is one other little piece on that order, and that is also ratings. So ratings, we all know what the complexities, the challenges of that are. The further we go, and as we get a governing body that is for the sport of pickleball, not to run other people's businesses, doesn't have anything to do with that. It has nothing to do with running national leadership on programs. The way that a governing body has to come together, though, when you think about it, is they need structure, they need organization, they need a budget. There's a lot of things that have to happen for a governing body. Think of FIFA in soccer. Think of the International Golf Federation. Think of the ITF in tennis. These are all governing bodies that all set the tone for the world in their sports. There's a couple of things, and I want to kind of talk about what the positive side of our arriving as a sport with global governance. When you think of sports in the world, those of us that are in America, we've seen this sport go nuts. It's just gone over the top. No one could have ever fantasized that we would be where we are in 2025 in 2022. Wouldn't be possible. That being said, the rest of the world is now looking at all of the reasons we've had the success that we have in America. That's why the adoption is coming all over the world. And it's grown up for years and years and years. Lots of different people have done lots to make that happen and grow it. But as long as we have the disruptions, the interruptions, the confusion of why we don't have a governing body, it stands in the way of our sport being recognized the same way that tennis is, soccer, baseball, football, everything that has a global governing body. When we achieve that in pickleball, it will be the greatest moment that we've had to date. So think about this. Big issue. It can take, let's take sponsorship as an example. When you look at the corporations that support sports all over the world, the really big ones, why do they do it? Because they want their brand to come to the audience that is that sport. Think of our demographics in pickleball and this amazing young to old, 8 to 80 demographic that nobody else has got. It's magical. Think in terms of sponsors in our game, like Powerade, Gatorade, Ford Motor Company, McDonald's, Toyota, Nike, Adidas, Pepsi-Cola, Coca-Cola. The reason I've selected those is if you Google what are the top international brands that advertise in sports, those are the names that come up. But they're not interested in working with anything that's in a disruptive state. And we've had reports after reports of how sponsors are waiting to see how pickleball resolves its issues. They know what's going on with the sport. They want to see unification, and they want to see the sport in a non-conflict environment. That's one of the things that I think is so important about our achieving global governance. There's been a tremendous amount of talk over the years, and very understandable, about the IOC and how important it is that we have a global governing body, a singular one, and the IOC will not work with multiples. We need to be singular and unified. The first opportunity we'll have to be in an Olympics is 2032 in Brisbane, Australia, if it happens in 2032. The process of getting Olympic inclusion is really a long and arduous one. Javier Regalado talked about some of the efforts that his organization is making, where they were in Switzerland trying to start to move this thing along. It's a long process. What I'm here to say is that we need to have this happen fast. The quicker we can make the statement, I would love to see January 1, 2026 be an announcement that we have global unification. I hope everybody here, and we've got a lot of the parties involved, can overcome their hurdles and their objections to each other and move this thing forward. If we can make the statement January 1st, 2026, that pickleball is a global sport and it has a global governing body that has set the stage, it will be an amazing moment both for us to talk about here in America, but also think about all these emerging countries around the world. Part of their hurdle is there where America was 5 years ago, 7 years ago, 10 years ago in some cases. They're in the very emerging stages. If they can go to their national sports councils and say, we want to join pickleball, we want you to recognize us because this is now a global sport, let me show you. That'll be a very, very powerful time. And think about media all over the world. When something happens in America, we know the news goes nuts. For us to be in a position to say, on every media opportunity, I told you so. You laughed, you kidded, oh, it was an old people's sport. It was all of these things that many of us that have been around for a long time in the game have seen that said, no, you just don't understand it. When we can say we have a global governing body that's setting up pickleball uniformly all over the world, that's a magic moment. I do want to kind of talk about some of the things that I've learned in a lot of my interviews and conversations that I've had with now people all over the world. And this is really about the different organizations that are all vying for leadership, and many of the objections that I've heard and one thing or another. And I want to kind of include you guys in some of the challenges that have been out there. One of the primary discussion points is that a global sport has to have one vote for one member for it to be a democratic organization. And in the face of that, you might say, well, that sounds like that might make sense. There are other ways to look at it. So in the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, there are 7 organizations that use what's called weighted voting. So they make the determination that whether it is due to the history of the history of members in the sport, their experience, some of them may be way ahead of others. Some of the less developed countries look to the leadership from the more developed countries. Who has the resources, the structure, and the staff? How do they get aligned with their own national governing bodies? One of the things that's interesting that I found out in looking into this whole subject of global governance is the IOC does not simply recognize a country on an international federation's roster as real until they're aligned with their own national sports organization. These are the kinds of things that the global governing body does and should be doing to help these sports come along. The examples that I want to give you, though, of who the sports are, so in the 7 sports that use weighted voting, and I'll come back to that a little bit because I want to make sure everybody understands that there are some differences of opinions here. World Rowing, the World Taekwondo, the ITF, the World Tennis Organization, is weighted. The International Hockey Federation is a weighted organization. Badminton is weighted. UCI, which is the World Cycling Federation, is a weighted system. And the final one is the FIS, which is the International Ski Federation, is a weighted organization. And they do this for any number of reasons, and one is not right and one is not wrong. But I've heard from many people that there are some absolutes. I'm finding there aren't absolutes. There's a lot of variations, and that's what I want to encourage everybody to start thinking about. Think about solutions, don't think about problems. We need to move this forward and really make this happen. Money and funding for a global organization is going to be paramount. There's no two ways about it. You can't, the different groups, everybody that I know of that's been involved in trying to grow and develop the sport internationally, basically are all volunteers. You can do that for a while, you can't do that forever. At the end of the day, there has to be some funding. We won't be able to get that funding until, as a sport, we're unified behind a global effort. A couple of the other things that you want to keep in mind about hurdles with smaller emerging companies and how their voting position might work. I was in Europe last summer, and I was in Belgium. And Belgium had really a fun, cool vibe going on. I was a little surprised at how sort of dated it was from an American pickleball person's perspective. But they were in very old gyms, very rough lines, temporary nets, which we had all done early on. It was surprising not to see anything more developed than that. Well, at the end of the day, Belgium tells me they had about 1,000 members in their pickleball association. Well, 1,000 members, and they don't have the experience. They have a good tournament there now. It's in its second year, I think, this year. But they're so early stage, their ability to have the experiences that the major leading countries of the world have through experience. With the US, Canada, Australia, the amount of background, the amount of mistakes that they've made and learned from, these are all of the things that the leading countries of the world should be trying to give to the emerging countries of the world. So that experience and then running tournaments is such a huge piece. In November last year in Mesa, Arizona, when the US Nationals was in there, there were 18 countries' leaders flew into Arizona, and they came in to see what it takes to put on a tournament to the magnitude of what the U.S. Open is, or of what the U.S. Nationals is. I don't know if Luke Underwood is here. I met Luke yesterday, and he's here in attendance, and he's from the USA Pickleball, and he's their vice president of national events, and is the guy that's kind of coordinating and leading things. A great resource for any of you that are looking at doing big tournaments to find out what it takes to do it and how they make it happen. A way that I think we can move this subject forward is we have all of the bodies that are involved in trying to figure out the solution to global pickleball. Ask those people. Tell us what your organization has done in the last couple of years. Showcase what you're actually doing in the sport. Ask every representative, if you have a voice and you have an influence in pickleball, how are you helping the sport grow? How are you helping it beyond your own personal interests, or if there are any financial goals? Don't misunderstand me. Profits, I'm the most profit-oriented guy you could imagine. I spent my whole life trying to make a good living. Profit's not a bad thing. It doesn't have a place in global pickleball. Global pickleball is a governing body that is for everyone. Individual leagues, local, regional, national tournaments, pro leagues, these are all part of the fabric of sport, but they have personal, singular financial objectives. They don't serve the whole sport. By design, they serve their own interests and finances. But global governing is the body that serves and represents all pickleball, every country on every continent internationally. The global body is the ultimate entity that I write this one down. It represents the sport of pickleball, not any league or any profit-driven entity. Global governance is the voice and spirit and soul of what is pickleball around the world. Think about the confusion and disruption the UPA and the PPA alone have brought to the game. Separate rules, separate and very expensive equipment testing standards, many policies designed to control pro players and now to not allow them to compete on the world stage. How does that help the growth of pickleball? How does that eliminate confusion and disruption? The growth of the game organically is proof positive of what an amazing sport we have here. When you think of this game, I'll use myself as an example. The fact I'm a pretty good pickleball player, The fact that I can go on a court with men that are half my age, maybe my kids' ages or younger, and I don't have to, my goal can't be to beat them, but to be able to represent, play the game well, and have them go, hey, the old guy can hang. That is an amazing thing. I don't know what other sport I or anybody else could do in that. That being said, we need to look at why pickleball has blown up the way it did in America, then Canada, now Australia, now Vietnam we all are hearing about, India, China's having its moments. It's because of the elements of the game. It is unique and it has characteristics that have never been available in other sports before. Easy entry, challenging to master. It gives the whole range and the whole gambit of what sports and recreation can be and should be. If we work together and unify all the countries around the world to join our amazing sport together, imagine where pickleball can be in 5 years. Think about any of us who are here. The vast majority of people haven't been in the sport 5 years. So think of that entire window, a 5-year period. Well, 5 years from now, we'll still be 2 years away from the Brisbane Olympics if we're participating in it. That's a long window. Pickleball's unified governance, it will elevate pickleball to the top of the ranks of sports around the world. I believe that pickleball can become the largest participation sport in the world. Let's become unified. Take pickleball to its ultimate possibilities around the world. If you're with me on this, the goal and objective at an industry event like this is if you know anyone anywhere, help talk about, promote, and focus on how critical it is. Let's bring all of the parties together. Let's stop the bickering and the arguing and the disputes, and let's get global governance settled. We all have a vested interest in global governance. Thank you. I'd be more than glad to take any questions if I've stimulated anything. Yes?
What would you say are the biggest barriers to getting bigger organizations?
The hurdle is historically there's been different groups that have announced different interests. The IPF and WPF are here and they've just merged, which is a great connection. It's the idea we have different bodies all vying to say we're the one. We've got to get beyond that. You know, it's the classic to me, and these are my opinions, ladies and gentlemen, and that's all they are. The desire for people to be able to say, I did it, I'm the one, I think that literally is standing in the way. I think as you look, one of the things that's great for those of you who are in attendance here today is the fact that you're able to see and hear these different entities talk and discuss what they're doing and what their goals are. You can make your own opinions as to what you think should happen, but at the end of the day, nothing happens until we can get all of the different groups to come together and say, the game of pickleball is more important than the self-interests other than the game of pickleball. Any other questions? Yes?
I think you used golf as an example where pickleball wants to be. Do you know the timeline of how long it took golf to become global? And are we behind?
You know, I've never thought specifically about that. I have done actually quite a bit of investigation and reviewing of how do other governing bodies, you know, deal with their sport. Golf and tennis both are somewhat unique in the standpoint that they're such old sports. I mean, they go back where they're well over 100 years old. I don't know. I think of being a very young man in the kind of the growth area of golf where it was becoming a big deal, leaving the country clubs and becoming an everyman sport, and then tennis did the same thing where they really were exclusive country club sports that expanded, but I don't know that I know exactly what that timeline is. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
It sounds to me like what's missing is commonality. Some way for the world to grow on an even scale. I got back from Costa Rica, and nobody down there is above a 4.0. The majority are very low-level players, And none of the higher level players wanted to play with the lower level players because it brings down their duper. I didn't know what to say. So what I think you really need is like golf. A handicap in golf is actually significant all around the world. Unless you get to that level, you will never, ever get in the Olympics. What do you think?
Interesting. I look at it as though I think we do have a handicapping system, and it is ratings. So we've got any number of entities, and I know exactly what you're saying. I mean, I've traveled all over the United States and a lot of other parts of the world playing pickleball. I use my duper rating as kind of my badge of honor because I'm looking to play with the best players that I can find and have fun with. And they don't expect a man my age maybe to be a high 4.4, 4.5 duper. That being said, it opens the doors a lot of places. I think the issue that you're talking about is very real. I think we're still early stage enough that part of the growth and change, just like I said, you don't have to go to Costa Rica to run into courts where people go, I don't want to put my rating at risk in what I'm going to play. That happens in Surprise, Arizona, where I live every single day. The idea is I think we're going to find that these things are going to evolve. It looks to me, as an example, I know what UTR is trying to do. It looks to me, in the feel I've got from my exposure, that duper pretty much has a strong lead on where ratings are going to go. The hurdle with everybody I've ever interviewed from duper, and I've had them on my show, they talk about data. And the more match input they get, the better the data. Yes, you've got another question.
How can you have accurate data when nobody reports all their scores? It's impossible.
Well, it isn't impossible. There are a lot of places that do it, and that's some of that I think is the maturity of the sport. Romy, that's almost sitting next to you, has done trips to Costa Rica, any number of times. I think the solutions have to be that we need to look, and global governance is not going to dictate that. That's going to be something that's out there in the space. The public's always going to have their opportunity to choose. Do they want to do this? Does a tournament director want to select one program or another? But at the end of the day, most people that I know that are seriously in the game of pickleball, they like the rating system because it lets them identify themselves and their partners and components. Playing a tournament, it really solves all your issues. You go in there, you rate yourself, go in, play, and the outcome's the outcome. And it's a competitive tournament environment. Any other thoughts or ideas? Yes.
I have two areas. One is with the sanctioning, with the duper versus UTR. Duper is not sanctioned. Anyone can go enter a score, and there are different ways that clubs can have their own inner key or whatever. But when it comes to the governing board and for national, international, anything, it has to be sanctioned. I can have tequila shots at my friend's house who has a pickleball court. We want to get Susie on for the competing in a tournament at 4 or 5, and we're all like, she's a 4-2. We could put in a score, have a shot, and enter the thing. It has to be sanctioned. That's what UTR, and I'm happy that everybody is doing their best job. I'm not going to say I support duper, but UTR, it's just sanctioned. The other thing is, I've done stuff with a significant factor in getting surfing in the Olympics. And I've been fortunate enough to sit with Alan Schwartz. If anyone you knew who he was with USTA, he was the past president who got the rating system during the 60s or 70s done. He took me under his wing. I sat in meetings. I'm going to tell you, the national and global in here between PPA, MLP, I love Steve Kuhn. The difference is that sponsorship, and I wonder if anybody can agree, sponsorship is running pickleball, okay? There has to be a governing board to take control of that. If sponsorship were to cut off and go toward one, governing board would be done in a day. So there has to be some driving force to get some powerful sponsors to sit down with them as well as these governing boards. The governing board has to get the support of the sponsors and explain to those entities to bring it over.
Like she said. Yes, dear, you're right on.
And we support everybody's things.
But you're mentioning kind of an interesting tweak, and that's the fact that you're discussing Duper and UTR, and they really have nothing to do with global governance.
That was just the one part that you brought up with him.
Okay.
The global governance, I'm telling you, sponsorship. I even sat down. Alan passed away when I was called in with pickleball from tours. Whatever, just with my background. I'm not going to get into that. I said, okay, tell me it's a pro sport. It took a year to convince me that it was a pro sport. But the problem here is that he said sponsorship is running there. Someone has to take the helm. And the way that we can do that within getting a global body is sit down not with just the other body. You've got to get powerful, like you said,
yes.
Some of those people, 7 sponsors, go in front of Pepsi, go in front of those, and explain what their vision is and get them to hop on your bandwagon. It'll happen.
Bingo. Let's get a lot of hopping on the wagon and get it going. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for the opportunity. Can I take one more?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm going to have a very simplistic question. You talk about global governance. You're advocating for this, right? Where, and you're looking for a framework of this. Where do you go and see this initial framework? Who's involved?
So the question is, how would you find out kind of the same information I'm talking about, or find out more than you know already? If you go on the individual organizations' websites, you'll get a vast amount of knowledge from their particular positions. So you've got the ITF and the WPF. I think, is it under WPF? Is that the? ITF's not involved. Okay, so the WPF website, and then go on the GPF website, and you'll see what they're doing. Like anything, you'll get a lot of information there. A lot of the details that don't come out in the websites is the backroom negotiations. Everybody's got their perspective and their mindset. None of them are wrong, but none of them are completely right. That's why we need to get this hurdle done, get through the bickering, the fighting, the arguing over little tiny details that are surmountable. They need the initiative and the motivation to do it and get it done. And I think we got to get it done sooner rather than later, because it's a moment that will change pickleball's perspective in the world. And we have no other way of doing that other than picking off a country and doing a program and running an effort. That's where global governance is so important. And imagine now if we weren't having this discussion about how do we get there, but we had a global governing body recognized, and now how do we get behind it, help them, help steer them, help them accomplish everything that they want to do. We can't do that until we get to the singular. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time.